We'll start off with the state of Black America as far as you see us going into the year 2000. How do you see the state of Black America as far as this political power?
Well, one of the things that is facing the black community all over this country is that as we have more black representation throughout this country, cities, states, and also in Washington, we're starting to see a resurgence in the necessary programs and policies that are brought forth to change the conditions of black people in America. And when I say that, I mean that many times that when we talk about legislation, when we talk about those things that are necessary to bring about a change in people's lives, those individuals are generally African Americans that bring those things forward as it relates to the differences that are made in black people's lives throughout this country. Well, I think that what has to happen in a community such as Dayton, Ohio, to give you an example where better than probably 50% of the voting populace is African American, one of the things that we have to do is we have to start dealing with those people that feel disassociated from the system itself. Those folks that have traditionally not been in the political role. Some people have not even voted. And those that are new voters, educating them to the process itself. You know, one of the things is when you learn the process and you see every day how simple things can be changed by numbers of people, not only showing up and becoming involved in the process and the discussions that go along with changing the process, from anything from getting federal dollars spent within your community, state dollars spent in your community, making sure that some of your city budget is spent directly in your community. These are things that people will have to do by being, I think, put forth to become more involved in the process itself by getting them involved. By getting involved meaning that once they see changes that they directly have inputted into, you will see them become more involved, because it could be something, like I said, as simple as making sure that the business strip in your community is looking like it should with African Americans in business, the opportunities for entry-level job positions. All of those things are generally a direct result of someone putting forth some effort. So once you see that happen within your community, you will see people become more involved, they will feel more a part of it, and once they feel more a part of it, they will feel a lot better about getting out and voting and becoming involved in local politics and, along with state and hopefully in the presidential elections also.
You mentioned educating the voters. What are some methods of educating the voters? Should the school system be more involved in the education of just the overall understanding of what they're voting for?
Well, you know, Steve, it's very important, of course, for those individuals that are turning 18 years old on the high school level, generally a senior, some juniors, that are 18 to become involved, of course, and the schools to play a pivotal role in it. But we have a tremendous amount of people within our community that are 30, 40, 50. Some folks are even 60 years old that have yet to vote and that are just now becoming registered voters through some disenfranchisement that they feel through the system. So, of course, the Million Man March and many of us that have gone out and registered hundreds of voters have tried to instill to people that you have to become involved in it. By becoming involved in the system itself, like I said, those people, once again, have to be able to feel a part of it. And by feeling a part of it, they have the ability to change the conditions of their community, their state, and this country as a whole. But in order to make them feel a part of it, you've got to start off from a position of being able to bring those people in, of course, in an entry-level position. And when I say entry-level, I mean when you are fresh out of high school or you're of age of 18 to vote, and then becoming involved, not necessarily in some of the more traditional things in terms of the Republican or the Democratic Voters League or things of that nature, or the parties, but you have to become involved as a whole, no matter where you're at as an independent or whatever the situation might be within the community. Because if you look around, everything that we deal with in any respective community is political.
Do you think that it's important for individuals to join on to organizations and that might give them a better understanding of what to vote for?
Well, you know, there are some good parts to organizations in terms of like the Democratic Party and the Republican Party that are probably the two most established systems, or the two established parties that have a given system. But you know, one of the things that I have a problem with is that is a one-sided slant to it. And I think as we move into, of course, the new millennium, and we move into this global situation, we see neighborhoods changing where blacks and whites are living more together, blacks and whites are working more together. Racial relations in this country are probably the best that they've ever been, and it's probably about the best that they're ever going to get at this particular point. That you start seeing many different people slanting, or I like to call it putting a tilt on the beginning of your thought process of where you need to be. Case in point with the president, it's not just where the president could be, or what a president stands for in his party. It's what he does for everyone. It's the same as a mayor. It's the same as a city commissioner. It's the same as a judge. I mean, you know, even though they have their respective parties and they run up under those parties, it is very important that that person has a perspective of the whole community, rich, poor, in between, black, white, male, female, gay, the whole 9 yards. There are so many different parts and aspects of it, is that you have to go out and become educated yourself before I think you get indoctrinated in to one part of it. And it's not just being an independent, which I think is somewhat what they call a loose term, but it is becoming educated yourself in order to understand where you need to be in the process.
What are some good materials that one could go and that you know of that they can educate themselves with?
Well, there are many different ways. I mean, first of all, when you start talking about voting, and you start talking about the candidates, and you start talking about the issues, sometimes we fail to read what an issue involves. What is it? Because it is very long, and sometimes when it is a constitutional amendment or a state amendment, or on the city level, a charter amendment, sometimes we get lost in the process of all the words that go into it. But there are many different organizations. I mean, the Women's Voters League, which is a nonpartisan group, they generally put out very, very good information as it relates to issues and candidates themselves. There's no tilt, there's no endorsement. It is basically just telling it like it is and what the pros and the cons are of any issue and any candidate and where they stand. There are many other different materials that are put out, of course, during all types of election times, depending upon where it is, be it presidential or on the local level, that come out during that time. But you've got to indoctrinate yourself to read the literature, read the material, and be able to not be swayed one way or the other by what you might think is more